Welcome to Politics Watch-JTA. In today's video, we're diving into some major updates from Jamaica's political scene. We will examine People's National Party, PNP, caretaker for St. Thomas Western. Hubert Williams pledged to build a mini-stadium in Yallahs if he's elected in the upcoming general election. We will also hear from Transport Minister Daryl Vaz, who stresses that the current rural school bus tour is all about educating Jamaicans on the bus's safety and functionality, and that it shouldn't be politicized. Plus, we will cover the Jamaica Teachers Association's, JTA, firm rejection of Opposition Spokesman on Education Damion Crawford's proposal to extend the school day by 2 hours, calling it an overcomplication of a simple issue. Thanks so much to all our loyal viewers and subscribers for your continued support. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. And if you appreciate this content, please like the video and share it with your family, friends, and colleagues. Let's get started. The recent political address by Hubert Williams, People's National Party, PNP, caretaker for St. Thomas Western, offers fertile ground for critical analysis, both in terms of policy substance and political optics, especially against the backdrop of legal controversies and government development plans. Williams' speech appears aimed at projecting a vision of development and transformation, with key campaign promises such as construction of a mini-stadium in Yallahs, addressing chronic water supply issues, supporting farmers and improving irrigation, modernizing agriculture via better-equipped RADA officers. By branding himself as the performance boss, Williams seems to be borrowing from populist playbooks, crafting an image of action and delivery. However, without addressing the serious allegations against him, the credibility of this persona is undermined. Williams' decision not to directly address the charges of assault and obstruction, nor the alleged illegal occupation of government land, reflects a notable omission in his political messaging. Strategically, avoiding these controversies may be intended to keep the focus on development promises. Tactically, however, this creates an impression of evasiveness, especially in an era where political transparency is increasingly demanded by the electorate. This silence opens him up to criticism from opponents, who can easily portray him as ethically compromised or untrustworthy. Williams' promise to build a mini-stadium in Yallahs comes shortly after Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced plans for a multi-purpose entertainment and sports facility in Morant Bay. Just a few miles away is a second major facility needed in such close proximity. The proposal could be interpreted as a reactionary move to match or outdo the ruling party's project, rather than a genuine, well-thought-out infrastructure need. No clear details were given about funding sources, timelines, or partnerships for Williams' proposed stadium. Williams' pledges to support farmers and modernize agriculture are arguably the most grounded part of his speech. The need for improved irrigation, the under-resourcing of RADA officers, however, the lack of specific strategies, timelines, or partnerships weakens the proposal's substance. Promising more help and up-to-date equipment is vague, especially in the context of entrenched agricultural challenges in the parish. Williams is navigating a complicated political terrain. On one hand, he's pitching development-focused populism, aiming to energize his base and appeal to undecided voters. On the other hand, his failure to acknowledge or clarify legal and ethical issues undermines his credibility. His infrastructure promises are ambitious, but possibly redundant or underdeveloped, especially when juxtaposed against national development plans already in motion. Williams' speech reads more like political theater than a serious policy platform. For voters in St. Thomas Western, the key question becomes, are bold promises enough to overlook potential ethical liabilities and questions of feasibility? The controversy surrounding the rural school bus tour in Jamaica, led by Transport Minister Daryl Vaz, underscores persistent tensions between public service delivery and partisan political optics. At its core, this issue represents a deeper struggle over the perception of equity, governance accountability, and political neutrality in state-funded programs. Vaz asserts the bus tour is an apolitical public education initiative, intended to familiarize communities with the new buses, frames the reaction as natural excitement from constituents, not party-driven mobilization, emphasizes that MPs from all parties are welcome to use the buses for sensitization, Videos showing green flags and shirts, the Jamaica Labour Party's color, have raised serious concerns of partisan campaigning under the guise of public education, particularly from the People's National Party, PNP. Argue that the tour has evolved into a soft campaign tool, blurring the lines between government service and party promotion. While Vaz's messaging stresses inclusion and neutrality, the optics contradict the intent. In a highly polarized political environment like Jamaica's, symbolic associations, like party colors, are deeply loaded, even if not officially orchestrated. The visual dominance of JLP-affiliated symbols undermines claims of neutrality and risks eroding public trust. Government argues that the buses will save families transportation costs and increase safety and access to school, especially in rural areas. Dismisses PNP concerns as blatant lies, and suggests their criticism is politically motivated. Opposition leaders Mark Golding and Peter Bunting maintain the buses are second-hand, ill-suited for Jamaica's hilly terrain, and could present safety risks to students and pedestrians. The focus on optics, tours and flag waving, rather than technical assessments and infrastructure readiness exacerbates their skepticism. This points to a fundamental tension between policy rollout and oversight. The government has a duty to ensure the program's mechanical integrity, roadworthiness, and terrain suitability, especially for children's transportation. Instead of dismissing opposition concerns as lies, the ministry should have publicly released independent safety assessments and terrain tests, which would ground the debate in facts rather than political noise. The bus tour is happening in a period widely seen as pre-election mobilization. The fact that no opposition MP has taken part in the sensitization effort, whether by refusal or by perceived exclusion, raises questions about access equity. Minister claims the ministry is open to all MPs and blames the opposition for not engaging. Timing and perception are crucial. Rolling out a high-visibility public service tour in the midst of a politically charged atmosphere, especially with clear associations to one party's branding, risks undermining the legitimacy of the program. Even if opposition MPs were invited, the execution has lacked the appearance of fairness, which matters just as much as actual intent. Emphasizes that the buses are for all children, and urges critics to avoid dragging children's needs into political debates. This rhetorical framing, common in public service discourse, can be both valid and manipulative. While children's welfare should indeed be above partisan battles, using that moral high ground to silence legitimate critique is problematic. It's possible to advocate for children's interests while demanding transparency, fairness, and safety. The two are not mutually exclusive. The rural school bus tour, in principle, addresses a real and pressing need in Jamaica: affordable and safe transportation for rural students. However, the execution of the tour, amidst political theater and weak stakeholder engagement, has rendered it a casualty of optics and distrust. The debate over Opposition Spokesman on Education Damion Crawford's proposal to extend the school day in Jamaica by 2 hours presents a microcosm of the larger, more complex challenges facing the country's education system. The Jamaica Teachers Association, JTA, led by Dr. Mark Smith, has categorically rejected the idea, citing systemic issues such as underfunding, poor infrastructure, teacher burnout, and misplaced policy priorities. Crawford's perspective sees the extension of school hours as a pragmatic, student-centered approach to increasing academic engagement, safety, and structure for children, particularly in disadvantaged communities. Proposes a voluntary, paid model with enriched programming beyond core academics, such as extracurricular activities and homework help. Suggests the program would support working families, improve student outcomes, and create income opportunities for teachers. JTA's views this as a superficial fix to deeper issues. Dr. Smith's analogy, sophisticated rat trap for a roach problem, aptly captures the union's belief that the proposal targets symptoms rather than root causes. Argues that increasing instructional time doesn't solve problems like chronic underfunding, inadequate resources in early education, teacher demotivation, or poor learning environments. Crawford's proposal, while well-intentioned and somewhat progressive in scope, lacks traction because it appears to sidestep structural and economic realities. The JTA's rejection isn't necessarily about opposition to extended learning but about distrust in timing, priority, and feasibility. JTA is strongly critical of the 7.5% salary increment, calling it inadequate in a time of economic uncertainty and rising living costs. Emphasizes that asking teachers to work longer, even with pay, while salary negotiations remain unsatisfactory shows tone deafness to the profession's morale. Crawford's response clarifies that teachers would be paid for the extra hours and that participation would be voluntary. Suggests this could be a financial incentive for some educators. While the idea of voluntary participation may reduce the immediate backlash, the JTA's resistance underscores a credibility gap. Teachers doubt whether additional work will be fairly compensated in practice. Without broader wage reform and funding, the program risks being viewed as exploitative. JTA highlights infrastructure limitations. Many schools lack air conditioning, proper ventilation, and adequate classroom space. Warns of burnout and fatigue for both students and teachers, especially amid increasing temperatures and climate stress. Believes interventions like literacy and numeracy support can be delivered within the current schedule. Given the right support, Crawford's position implies that structured after-school programs may, in fact, alleviate stress by offering non-academic outlets and reducing unsafe idle time for students. These concerns are legitimate and deeply contextual. In many Jamaican schools, particularly rural and urban poor areas, physical discomfort already hampers learning. Without parallel investment in infrastructure and well-being, extending hours could exacerbate inequities and fatigue. Smith's comments suggest the JTA expected the opposition to be more aligned with their struggles, particularly around teacher remuneration and job satisfaction. The rejection also reveals a level of distrust toward top-down proposals, especially from political figures. In an environment where years of policy inconsistency and neglect have eroded confidence, the politicization of education reform often backfires when stakeholders feel consultation is symbolic rather than substantive. Even a good idea can flounder when teachers and administrators feel sidelined. The rejection of Crawford's proposal by the JTA should not be read as opposition to extended school programming per se, but rather as a resounding call for a holistic, inclusive, and needs-based approach to education reform in Jamaica. Policy innovation must be grounded in trust, equity, and context-specific realities. Otherwise, even promising ideas risk being dismissed as sophisticated rat traps in a system riddled with more urgent, fundamental needs.
Thanks for tuning in to Politics Watch JA. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update on the latest in Jamaican politics. I really appreciate all of you who continue to support the channel. And if you're new here, welcome. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. As always, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep watching. See you in the next video.